quadratic equations in this form. X squared is equal to k, which is something. I want to see if part of this is revision. An equation is something with variables and an equal sign. When I look at your day maps, I'm able to go back and see what you did in semester 1, and it says to me that people were marked on a linear equations test. So this should be a little bit familiar to you. Because of this, you should be able to solve things that look like this. Is there one variable here? Is there an equal sign? Because I have that, I should be able to find x. So can someone help me out? What steps would I do to get x by itself? I don't want to know what 2x is. I want to know what x is. What would I do? Don't tell me the Japanese kid's the only one who have to do it. You've done a test on this. So what was the point of that if you can't remember? I want to get rid of this plus 3. What is the opposite of adding 3 to something? Minusing 3. What do I have to do on both sides to make sure that I don't change the question? If I take 3 from one side, what do I have to do on the other side? Take 3 as well. So the way I would have taught it if I was your teacher in semester 1 is I'd put them in bricks. Because if I know that I've done one thing on the left, I need to do it on the right to keep it balanced up. If I have 3 take 3, what do I have left on that side? All I've got is 2x on the left-hand side. What's 7 take 3? 4? I don't have x by itself yet. 2 is doing something to x. What is the sign that I've been hammering you about that's between 2 and x? No, it's an x times, good. What's the opposite of timesing something by 2? Dividing by 2. Okay, so it's now all becoming familiar now. So that cancels out. So x is equal to whatever 4 divided by 2 is, which is 2. If that's all hazy to you, it's going to be repeated. I'm going to demonstrate it over and over again. But that should be assumed knowledge. You were tested on that already. I've got the evidence there. If that's BS, you need to tell me so I can catch up with our teacher. Huh? Yeah, no, but I can still chase it up. It's still public school. All right. This is what's new. A quadratic equation is an equation where the variable, we usually use x, is squared. So, for example, x squared plus 2 is equal to 6. So just get that down so that you're aware of what we're talking about as a quadratic equation. It's quadratic if you see x and it's squared. Let's see why they're tricky. Why is this harder than what you've done previously? Because now, this is what's different about Year 10 level maths is that, unfortunately, you're going to have more than one possible answer. Because the variable is squared. So, for example, if I was solving this, what is that saying? Something squared is equal to 4. Now, up to your level right now, what is the number? What number do I times by itself to get 4? Good. Right, you're fine with that. 2. But if I told you this, negative 2, no, I need to write but. But, what about negative 2 times by negative 2? What happens when you times a negative by a negative? And what's negative 2 times negative 2? So is the only answer to x squared is equal to 4 is the only answer to? Do we have 2 options here? We've got positive 2 or minus 2. That's a big step that we didn't do in year 9 or anything. So the way we write this is written x equals plus, with a minus directly under it, 2. What is that indicating? The answer to this equation here, x squared is equal to 4, can be either positive 2 or minus 2. Can you give you some time, a few minutes to get to that star there? Yep, question?
What does it say after this is?
Written.
Okay.
My bad. I am doing it live, so that's the only explanation for that. And also, if you ever use an iPad or an Apple Pencil, it's very slippery.
Yes.
Yeah? So is that an example that shows you that now we might have to deal with more than one answer? Okay, let's do some examples. So the most basic quadratic equation we deal with is what we're dealing with today. X squared is equal to something. This formula, so this should go on your cheat sheet, lets you deal with the 3 kinds of situations that you're going to see coming up, okay? So there's 3 possible things that you'll see if you have x squared is equal to something. You'll either have x is equal to plus or minus. Does anyone know what this symbol is around the k? Good. So you must have done Pythagoras before. X is equal to plus or minus the square root of k if k was more than 0. That's one option. The other option is x is equal to 0 if k was actually 0 as well. And this weird one here is probably only going to affect 3 or 4 of you in this class. If you do methods or spec, is you would write x is equal to no real solutions if your number k was less than 0. Have this on your cheat sheet, have this on your notes, and then I'll demonstrate how to use this little formula flowchart sort of thing. And then you'll practice until lesson 2, or lesson 4, sorry. You guys all know you'll be going to the Expo lesson 6 on Thursday, so straight after maths up here, you go to your next lesson, but then your teacher will take you up to the big gym for your career expo. You go straight from here to whatever your lesson 6 is, and you go up to the big gym. So again, if you've got an equation that says x squared is equal to a number, which we're calling k, option 1, x is going to be plus or minus the root of k. If k was more than 1, x could be 0 if k was 0, and x could be no real solutions if k was less than 0. So don't stress about what this is about. The only people that will have to deal with this later, if you do specialist maths, you're going to deal with something called imaginary numbers. Because they're imaginary, they're not real. So, alright, let's demonstrate this. Solve for x. So we're going to look back at this little flow chart here. Solving for x. Right now, does this problem look like this? Is it x squared is equal to something? It could be. Right now it's x squared plus something is equal to something. What could I do with this plus 3 to get rid of it? Take it. So if I took 3 from both sides, x squared plus 3, to get rid of it, I take 3 and put it in a box. 6, take 3. What's going to be left on the left-hand side there if I had plus 3 and take 3? Nothing. You're just going to have x squared left is equal to... What's 6 take 3? 3. So now, what is our step? What is the opposite of squaring something? Square rooting it. Okay? So now you look at this flowchart here. We have a situation that x squared is equal to a number. What is that number in this problem? It's 3. And then I look at my little flowchart. It's going to be one of these 3 things. Is k more than 0 in our problem? Yeah. It's 3. So my answer is just going to be x is equal to plus or minus square root of k, which was 3. So you go x is equal to plus or minus square root of k. That is your answer. First example down. Get that down, please. Got it? Next example. As you can see, the way I teach, we go simple and then you get harder, so that you see all different examples. Mr. T, what's wrong with you? This looks nothing like what you just showed us how to do. Can we do some maths to this to make it look like x squared is equal to something? How do I get rid... What kind of a 3 is this? What's the opposite of adding 3 to something? Take 3. So if I took 3 from both... I'm not going to do the brick step anymore. If I took 3 from both sides, I'm going to be left with 2x squared is equal to 7 take 3, which is 4. What's negative 2 doing to x squared? What's timesing? Good. What's the opposite of timesing something by negative 2? Divide both sides by negative 2. That negative 2 over negative 2 cancels out. So you've got x squared is equal to... What's 4 divided by negative 2? Negative 2. Hold on. Okay, we have this situation. You've got x squared is equal to something. There's 3 options. Look back at your flow chart. Was k more than 0? It's negative 2. No, it's not the top one. Was k 0? No, it was negative 2. What's the last option? Was k less than 0? It was negative 2. So what are you going to write? X is equal to? No real solutions. At this point in year 10 maths, we cannot have the square root of a negative number. So you go x equals no real solutions. Have that done, please. All right. So I want to stretch and make sure that you have all manner of examples here. Another one. You're looking at this and going, Mr. T, what's wrong with you? This looks nothing like that flowchart that I showed you. What do brackets do to numbers? They group them up. So we can think of this as a single thing. So if you think back to your little flowchart, x squared is equal to something. Am I grouping the x take 2? So secretly, this looks the same. It's x squared equals something. It's just been grouped. So with your flowchart, x squared is equal to something. Is this number here larger than 0, 0, or less than 0? So your answer, when you apply the flowchart, is x take 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 25. I used option 1. Is the square root of 25 an actual number? Is there a number I can times by itself to get 25? 2 times 2, 4. 3 times 5. Well done. So x take 2 is equal to plus or minus 5. Is x by itself yet? How would I get x by itself? What is the opposite of taking 2 from the left-hand side? Adding 2. So, this is where it gets tricky. Okay, even my Ignites stuff this up sometimes. Because they forgot, does this plus or minus represent 2 things? Yeah, so it's either, what's the opposite of taking 2? Adding 2. It's 2 plus 5 or 2 take 5. So you have 2 options for answers. What is 2 add 5? 7 or 2 take 5. What kind of a 3? Negative 3. So this is taking a step up from year 9 now. Before you only had 1 answer. Now you have to think about it. You need to have, there's possibly 2. Get that example done. I'll hit you with one more example and then I'll leave you alone until lesson 2. Right, last one here. This is again x squared is equal to something. Are there brackets here grouping it up? Let's think through the flow chart. Is this 0? Is it less than 0 or is it greater than 0? Greater than 0. So your answer, your first step of working is going to be x plus 1 is equal to plus or minus root 7. Is there a nice number that I can times by itself to get 7? No. So you just leave it at root 7. It's not like 25 where it was 5 times 5. You leave it at root 7. What is the I'm not done here yet. I want x by itself. So what is the opposite of adding 1 to something? Taking 1. So if I took 1 from both sides, it will be x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus root 7. And you literally leave it like that. Because you can't get it more accurate. If you go on your calculator and found square root of 7, it's a number and the decimals never end. You don't have time to write a never-ending decimal on your piece of paper. So your answer stays at negative 1 plus or minus root 7. Can you get that down, please? I'll leave you alone now. Your homework now is in the quadratics PDF attached to DayMap. Can you answer these 7 questions using that flowchart that I gave you? I'll stop with the video now so you can talk.